Welcome back to Master 79. In this video we are taking one cue card all the way through ielts speaking part 2 and part 3. Describe a disagreement you had with someone. You will see the 1 minute of planning, a full 2-minute answer, and then all 4 part 3 questions answered in turn. Here is the plan. First, how part 2 actually works. Then the cue card exactly as it was printed, the 1 minute of note-taking, and the full spoken answer. After that we move into part 3, where the questions turn abstract, and we finish with the language banks and the band descriptors. Part 2 is the only part of the test where you speak alone. You are handed a card, you get 1 minute with paper and a pencil, and then you talk for between 1 and 2 minutes. Nobody prompts you. The examiner will stop you at 2 minutes, so aim to be still speaking when that happens. This is the card, transcribed exactly as it was printed, including the item number, 3 bullets to cover, and then a 4th instruction, which is the one candidates most often forget. Explain how you felt about it. Now, the 1 minute. This minute decides the answer, so do not waste it writing sentences. Choose a real memory in the first 10 seconds, then put 1 line of keywords against each bullet. Add 2 feeling words, 1 for how you felt then and 1 for how you see it now, and keep the last 10 seconds for your opening line. Bullet 1. Who you had the disagreement with. Our candidate picks a close friend called Hoa, who she was paired with for a final year presentation about 18 months ago. Notice that the relationship is established in a single sentence, and the time frame immediately sets every verb in the past. Bullet 2. What the disagreement was. They were arguing about how to open the pitch, hard data first or one customer's story first. Give both positions, not only your own. 2 viewpoints double your grammar range and they make you sound fair-minded rather than stubborn. Bullet 3. What happened? This is the bullet that carries the story, so it gets the most time. A week of going round in circles, emails getting frostier, a blunt message deleted before sending, and then a flatmate's obvious suggestion. This is where past perfect and past continuous earn their marks. And the 4th instruction, how you felt about it. Answer it twice, how you felt at the time, and how you see it now, looking back. That contrast is the cheapest way to show tense control, and it gives the answer somewhere to end. So after 1 minute, the paper looks like this. 35 words of keywords in total. Nothing here is a sentence because you cannot read from a page and still sound natural. What you have is a running order. And this is how that running order maps onto the clock. Roughly 15 seconds on who, 25 on the 2 positions, 40 on what happened, and 30 on how you felt. You do not need to time this in the exam. You just need to know that the story bullet is the long one and the feelings bullet is where you land. Here is the answer in the candidate's own voice. First section, who it was and what the disagreement actually was.
I'd like to talk about a disagreement I had about 18 months ago with a close friend of mine called Hoa, who I was paired with for a final year marketing presentation. The crux of it was how to pitch the thing. I was adamant that we should lead with hard data, market figures, survey results, that sort of thing, because our lecturer had a reputation for grilling people on evidence. Hoa, on the other hand, was convinced that opening with one customer's story would land far better, and she thought my version would come across as dry and forgettable.
Second section, what happened? Listen for the past perfect and for the idiom doing real work rather than being decoration.
What actually happened was that we went round in circles for the best part of a week. Our emails got shorter and slightly frostier, and at one point I drafted a fairly blunt message and thankfully deleted it before I sent it. In the end, my flatmate suggested something obvious that neither of us had considered, that we simply try both. So we mocked up 2 openings and ran them past a few classmates, and it turned out the story version held their attention far better, that they were quick to add that the data was what made the argument credible. We ended up merging the two.
And the final section, how she felt then, how she sees it now, and a reflection to close on rather than a summary.
As for how I felt, it was a bit of a mixed bag. At the time, I was quietly frustrated, partly because I dug my heels in and partly because I hate friction with someone I'm close to. Looking back, though, I'm rather glad it happened. It taught me that in most disagreements, the two positions aren't mutually exclusive. You're often just arguing about the running order. And it made the friendship more honest because we'd proved we could push back on each other and come out the other side unscathed.
Here is the whole answer in one place, just under 300 words, which at a natural speaking pace comes out a little under 2 minutes. Pause the video if you want to read it properly. And the second half. Notice how little of this is unusual vocabulary. It is ordinary language used precisely. So why would we assess that as band 9? Not because of the story, which is unremarkable. Because every bullet is answered, the tenses shift deliberately, the idiom is doing work, and the answer ends somewhere rather than simply stopping. The Part 2 Language Bank. 6 groups, matching the shape of the story, setting the scene, defining the clash, escalation, resolution, how you felt then, and how you see it now. Learn one phrase from each group, not all of them. Now Part 3. Same topic area, completely different expectations. 4 to 5 minutes of two-way discussion, and the questions leave your own life behind and become general and abstract. The examiner may push back on what you say. That is not a trap, and your opinions are not being marked. Your English is. Every Part 3 answer can follow the same 4 moves. Commit to an answer. Give the reason. Add one concrete example. Then extend by conceding something or generalizing, and stop. 3 to 5 sentences. Question 1. What would you do if you disagreed with someone? The phrasing tells you which grammar is being tested, so the answer needs second conditionals. The candidate splits it, let trivial things go, and for serious things, find the common ground first. Listen to the conditionals here.
It depends enormously on the stakes and on who it is. If it's something trivial, I'd probably just let it go, because not every hill is worth dying on. But if it genuinely mattered, I'd start by establishing what we do agree on, since it narrows things down to the real sticking point. I'd also make a conscious effort to ask questions rather than fire back with counter-arguments. People tend to soften once they feel they've actually been heard. What I try to avoid is arguing to win, which is a habit I think most of us fall into without noticing.
Question 2. How do we stop an argument from escalating into a fight? This one wants general advice, not a story. Catch it early, lower your voice, take a break, and attack the problem rather than the person. general advice, and 2 quoted sentences contrasted against each other.
I think the key is catching it early, because once people are shouting, the content stops mattering and it becomes purely about ego. Practically speaking, lowering your voice rather than raising it works surprisingly well. It's very hard to keep shouting at somebody who's speaking quietly. Taking a deliberate break helps too, since 20 minutes is usually enough for the adrenaline to die down. And attacking the problem rather than the person makes an enormous difference. Saying this deadline isn't realistic lands very differently from your being unreasonable.
Question 3, and here we have to flag something. The question asks who should teach children to respect their teacher, which quietly shifts the topic from disagreement to authority. It is printed that way in the source, so we answer it as written rather than correcting it. Commit, then concede, then resolve. Notice she does not sit on the fence at the start.
Primarily parents, I'd say, because respect for authority is largely absorbed at home long before a child sets foot in a classroom. If a child hears the parents dismissing teachers over dinner, no amount of school policy is going to undo that. That said, teachers have to hold up their end. Respect that's demanded rather than earned tends to be pretty shallow, and children are remarkably good at spotting an adult who doesn't respect them back. So realistically, it's a joint effort, with the home laying the foundation and the school building on it.
Question 4. What disagreements do parents and children usually have? List the obvious ones first, then say what they all have in common. That movement from concrete to abstract is exactly what Part 3 rewards. Concrete list, then 1 sentence of abstraction to finish.
The classics don't really change, do they? Screen time, bedtimes, and tidying up when they're small, and then as teenagers it shifts to independence, curfews, friendship groups, and above all, what to study. In my part of the world, the choice of degree is probably the single biggest flashpoint, because parents tend to see it as a question of financial security, whereas the child sees it as their identity.
Underneath most of these rows, though, it's the same argument: the parents want to protect and the child wants autonomy.
And the Part 3 bank. These are the joints of an argument: committing, hedging, conceding, contrasting, generalizing, and consequence. 6 phrases here will carry you through almost any Part 3 question on any topic. Six things to avoid. The first is the most common and the most damaging: a memorized story. It sounds fine for 90 seconds and then falls apart the moment the examiner asks anything off script. And the honest caveat. Band 9 here is our own assessment of this answer against the public ielts band descriptors. It is not a score awarded by a certified examiner. And note the 4th criterion: pronunciation is not demonstrated in this video because the answer you just heard is read by a synthesized voice. Treat the wording as the model and your own recording as the test. So here is the challenge. Record yourself on this cue card for the full 2 minutes using your own disagreement, then answer all 4 Part 3 questions. Listen back 3 times, once for tenses, once for idiom, and once for whether you actually sound like yourself. If this helped, subscribe to Be Master 79 and I will see you in the next one.